Welcome back, everybody, to the Collector's Store St. Peter's Challenge. We are here in round 2, where we have Chris versus Adam.
Yeah, this is looking to be a good one. Two great players here in the St. Louis area. Chris is coming in a little bit from up north in my neck of the woods, so I'm always excited to see Chris play. And he's using his trusty hard Trick Room team with Lunala. I know Chris has been running this at several different events over the Regulation G season, where I actually kind of like Adam's team a little bit more. I think it's a bit cooler. What would you say, Jared?
Yeah, I definitely like to see some things that are a little bit non-standard, and this matchup is absolutely full of them. So, first we have, like you said, we have this Lunala Trick Room team, hard Trick Room with Psy Spam, with the Indeedee setting up Psychic Terrain, Gallade of all things for Psycho Cut, and then Lunala with Power Herb, Meteor Beam, Expanding Force, all sorts of really powerful, slow options on Chris's team. But Adam might be able to counter some of that with his Focus Sash Ditto. Not a Pokemon you see overly often, but in restricted metas, super dangerous, able to get one extra restricted over your opponent.
Yeah, not only that, but paired with Miraidon too. I can't think of too many Ditto Miraidon teams out there. But the Ditto could potentially be pretty strong here. I mean, the Ditto is going to be not without having a choice scarf. It means that it underspeeds all of Chris's Pokemon, it will speed tie with Chris's Pokemon, which could be pretty useful in Trick Room. For example, if you copy the Lunala, then all of a sudden you have a really big, you have Shadow Shield in Trick Room, and that might be enough to swing damage trades your way, especially with the Grimmsnarl setting up a Reflector Light Screen. So if I had to guess on Adam's side, I would expect something like the Grimmsnarl, Ditto, Miraidon, and then maybe the Heatran, or perhaps the Water Urshifu. On Chris's side, he definitely wants to get up Trick Room. That's the whole point of this team. But I think the big question is, which sweepers do you choose?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of big damage on Chris's side of the field. Ursaluna hasn't even been brought up yet, with Guts and Flame Orb able to do massive damage. Eruption Torkoal with the Charcoal item. And of course, you do have Urshifu-Single-Strike with Choice Band. Not the slowest thing, but even in Trick Room, Sucker Punch will still let it be going first.
So there's some tricky things here. The Torkoal is going to get completely blanked by the Heatran if it comes. The Torkoal only knows Fire-type attacks, except for that Weather Ball. But the only other weather that could come up in this game is No Weather, which should still be a normal-type attack and dealing very low damage to the Heatran. The Ursaluna could be good against the Ditto. Although Ditto could copy the Ursaluna, it can't copy the Flame Orb. So although it will get that Guts ability, it won't have it activated unless something statuses it, and I'm not really sure what that could be on either player's side. Maybe a Heat Wave Burn in a really niche situation, but looks like both players have locked in. Let's see how this starts here in round 2. We've got Chris versus Adam. Who's going to take it?
Yeah, absolutely. And here we go. We are loading in right now. Here in a moment, we will see what our two trainers have locked in as their first two Pokemon out. And here we have Adam throwing out Miraidon and Urshifu, wanting to get some big damage out at the start of this match, versus Lunala and Indeedee. Immediately, Electric Terrain is going to go up, but Indeedee's Psychic Surge is going to counter that immediately.
Yeah, I think you love to see this lead if you're Chris. You immediately reduce the effectiveness on the Miraidon. The Miraidon almost certainly going to Volt Switch out of here, likely going into the Grimmsnarl or into some other resist for the potential incoming Expanding Force. Expanding Force here into both Urshifu and Miraidon would do heavy damage, so it's very tempting for Chris to click that. You could just go for the Trick Room as well, just hit that setup. But again, I am almost certain that Grimmsnarl's coming in the back after Volt Switch from Miraidon. Miraidon could potentially go for a Draco Meteor. That would pick up the KO on the Indeedee since it's not holding that Psychic Seed item. Instead, actually switching out the Urshifu, though.
Yeah, interesting call. What is he going to be switching into? No, into the Ditto! That's right, the way the slots were lined up. Ditto is in front of the Lunala, meaning it immediately lets it copy. Here is the double restricted in a single restricted meta.
You always love to see that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we have Terra Grass coming out from Chris's Indeedee, probably wanting to resist some big electric-type damage outcoming from the Miraidon, or maybe anticipating water attacks from the Urshifu. Here comes the Dazzling Gleam, breaking the Shadow Shield on Lunala. Meanwhile, Expanding Force breaks the Ditto's Shadow Shield, and Trick Room goes up.
I think if you're Chris, you still like this board, though. The Miraidon just locked into the Dazzling Gleam, and even with the Shadow Shield broken, the subsequent damage from Dazzling Gleam is just going to be so low. Even if you commit Terrestrialization, which is very risky to do, there could just be another Expanding Force aimed that way. If you're Chris, I think this is just a pretty easy Moongeist Beam into Ditto and follow me. The Ditto could Terrestrialize to Terra Normal, though, to cover that. That would prevent the Ditto from taking any damage, but then it risks taking an Expanding Force, so what do you do? It's not super clear. The Ditto coming in, having its, not only the Shadow Shield broken, but also its Focus Sash, so not able to take a attack from Lunala. I think this is a pretty tricky spot, and actually we see the Urshifu come in, trying to set up for later.
Yeah, double switches here. Both terrain setters are switching out, wanting to be able to vie for terrain supremacy later. Here is that Heatran you were mentioning, coming into this field, and we have a Terrestrialization coming out onto the Lunala that is actually a Ditto, that Terra Normal, like you were saying, protecting it from a Moongeist Beam. We will see what Chris locked into here. So there's an Expanding Force dodged by the Urshifu and not doing very much to the real Lunala, and both are just trading Expanding Forces. Oh my goodness, with the Shadow Shield broken, Ditto falls so low after losing the resistance, but it does hang on.
Yeah, Ditto surviving there is important. It means that it now pressures a Moongeist Beam into the opposing Lunala at least, but this Urshifu I think is in a real great spot. Heatran is definitely not going to be able to knock it out in a single hit. You see this Urshifu has a lot of HP. Chris will know whether or not his own Urshifu is slower than his own Lunala, so you can know whether or not you can just like punch the Ditto in the face and take a knockout there. Close combat into the Heatran wouldn't be that bad either. It might open up the position for later, and yeah, I'm still favoring Chris on these turns. Heat Wave does come out first, though.
Yeah, Heat Wave comes out first. Does it get a burn? No, and the U-turn is going to be able to finish off that Ditto and get some repositioning on the field. But that's good information for both trainers that Heatran is slower than everything that was on the field just now.
Yeah, these speed tiers are pretty crucial to know as we go throughout this game, because knowing which Pokemon are attacking first is just going to be absolutely huge, and Ursaluna does come in. Oh, a Meteor Beam from Lunala as well.
Yeah, and really smart waiting on Ditto to no longer be a factor to get that Meteor Beam off, so the Ditto couldn't copy the +1 special attack boost. And this is going to hurt the Heatran. Not falling due to its Steel typing, but still getting back to just under half HP with that Citrus Berry.
So we've seen all of Adam's Pokemon at this point, and I don't think any of them really want to take an Earthquake from this Lunala, from the Ursaluna. Too many Luna Pokemon. The Urshifu does come back in. That can take the Earthquake the best, but it doesn't like taking a +1 Facade, or a +1 Moongeist Beam, excuse me. I bet you can just go Moongeist Beam Headlong Rush. How do you get around that? I don't know. It just looks like Chris has 2 1-hit KOs in front of him, and there's not really an obvious switch that Adam can make to reposition out of this.
Yeah, this is a really tough position, especially because, like Chris was looking at earlier, there are 2 turns left of Trick Room. So, you know, Adam can go for a double protect to stall out one of those 2 turns, but you're not going to be able to guarantee stall out this Trick Room. So here comes at least 1 protect. We'll see if the Urshifu clicks detect itself, and it does not. So Headlong Rush is protected. The Heatran choosing not to go down to that attack. But there's that Moongeist Beam into the Urshifu, just like you were saying. We'll see how this does. And 1-hit KO, not the Dark-type Urshifu, Rapid Strike instead, being that Water typing, not allowing it to resist the Ghost-type attack.
Yeah, and now it's even more difficult. The Miraidon can't protect itself. If the Urshifu had protected itself, then you might have lost both Pokemon, but perhaps you could have gone for some Hail Mary double protects, and then maybe you would have ended up with Miraidon plus either Urshifu or Heatran, and maybe there'd be something you can do with that. I don't know, though, with Lunala, like, with the Indeedee being able to turn off the Miraidon's terrain as well, and Sucker Punch also into the Miraidon. Yeah, I don't know. Looks like the Lunala's going to retreat, just an Earthquake coming out.
Yeah, I think this is going to be it. An Earthquake will take out both of Adam's Pokemon here. And the craziest thing is that Indeedee probably will survive itself with the Terra Grass. Heatran does try to go for a double protect to stall out the Trick Room, but it doesn't appear to work. And Earthquake hitting both of Adam's Pokemon for super effective damage. It's a double knockout, and that lets Chris take game 1 here in this best of 3.
Yeah, if you're Chris, you love to see exactly how every turn of that game went. You were always in control, you were threatening high damage onto everything, and you won in a single Trick Room as well. That's exactly what you want to see if you're using a hard Trick Room team. So if you're Adam, I think you clearly have to readjust. The Expanding Force was just devastating for so many different reasons. I think that Grimmsnarl has got to come to this game. The Grimmsnarl with both Light Screen and Spirit Break would help so much into the Lunala in like a bunch of different ways. So I'd really like to see Grimmsnarl coming out here from Adam as an adjustment for game 2.
Yeah, I think Grimmsnarl is going to have to be a key adjustment for Adam going forward, because of the 4 Pokemon that Adam brought that game, there really wasn't any way to stop the Trick Room from being set up. Leading with Miraidon, only to have Electric Terrain neutralized by Psychic Surge from the Indeedee, led to a free Trick Room, and from there, the really powerful sweepers that Chris had in the back, and that Ursaluna and that Urshifu, really cleared up alongside the Lunala.
Yeah, I think I think if you're Adam, like, since there's no clear way of stopping Trick Room outside of like maybe LOL Rock Slide with Iron Treads, I think you've got to just accept that it's going up, and Grimmsnarl can at least help you weather the storm. With Light Screen versus the Lunala and Indeedee lead, the best punish that Chris has for that is maybe a Helping Hand plus an attack, but that's still not going to do too much. If you're Chris, you probably have to make some sort of aggressive play, maybe like hard switch in Ursaluna and go for Trick Room on the first turn. But still, I think this Grimmsnarl is got to be the key for Adam, and we'll see if that's what comes out and if it makes a difference. Chris here piloted that game 1 excellently.
Yeah, absolutely. It's up to Adam to adjust here in this game 2 in round 2 of the Collector's Store Local. And here we are jumping into that game 2. We'll see what Adam's going to be throwing out onto the field here in just a moment. And it is actually Miraidon and Heatran, so a slight adjustment. But once again, Chris bringing the same lead, and the terrain interactions are going to go the exact same way, with the electric terrain being subsumed by the psychic terrain here.
One advantage I think you have if you're Adam here is that if you do recognize that Volt Switch option on turn 1, potentially going for a Volt Switch in Heat Wave, you could go into Grimmsnarl, and if there was an Expanding Force coming out from the Lunala, then it would do very low damage into the Heatran and no damage at all into the Grimmsnarl. However, I'd say that's a little bit too easy. Chris here probably can see that coming. You can also just go for a fairly reasonable like Moongeist Trick Room. I don't think that Indeedee will fall to a combination attack of Volt Switch and Heat Wave, unless I'm... Yeah, maybe Indeedee, they typically do go more Fizz Def, so maybe it would fall to that combination attack. You just have to be careful with your Chris, I think. Just don't let things get too carried away. Looks like a Helping Hand is how Chris wants to approach his turn 1.
Interesting. Going for full offense here, Chris is. Here's that Volt Switch you were mentioning, breaking the Shadow Shield on the Lunala. With that broken, Lunala won't be taking half damage from attacks anymore, but we'll see what the Miraidon is switching into, and it is that Grimmsnarl, like you said, maybe anticipating that expanding force, but instead it's a Helping Hand Meteor Beam. This is going to be devastating to whatever was targeted. We saw the Heatran was able to take 1 before, but instead it's going right into the Grimmsnarl. Oh, but the Grimmsnarl hangs on. I did not expect that.
Yeah, that's a pretty clutch survival. The Grimmsnarl now will be able to get off a Light Screen, and the Heatran will probably be able to Heat Wave as one of these Pokemon will set Trick Room. I still think if you're Chris, like, you definitely got the best end of that. Like, I think that's still a fine turn. Like, you definitely did not want to go for an expanding force there. Getting the Meteor Beam into Grimmsnarl is still good, even though it didn't pick up the KO completely. We do actually just see the Indeedee retreat, and yeah, the Ursaluna coming in. That's a pretty safe switch to, like, the Heatran can't really do much as a punish.
Yeah, absolutely. Even a Heat Wave burn would actually just be just fine into this Ursaluna. Doing chip damage to both Pokemon. Gets the burn on the Lunala. That could be huge as Trick Room drags on here.
Yeah, Trick Room goes up from Lunala. If you're Chris, I think you're still okay with this, but now you are in a kind of an awkward spot. If the Heatran opts for its Terrestrialization to a Terra Bug, that would resist the ground-type attacks that the Ursaluna has. The Ursaluna probably not keen to go for an Earthquake here. That would knock out your own Lunala, and you don't really want to switch anything else in on an Earthquake right now. And if you're Adam, you should be able to recognize that there's no Earthquake switch in. So unlikely to go for that Earthquake, which means that you have to kind of gamble between Facade and Headlong, and it might not even be a gamble. I think a Reflect. Oh, why is it that disconnect, dude? Oh, man. Oh, that was shaping up to be.
So, Leonard, remind me of the rules here. Technically, no Pokemon had fainted yet, correct? So that means it'll just be a complete reset, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, this should be ruled as a null game. I think this should be ruled. Well, I don't remember if this is going to be ruled as a tie or a null game, because it was 4-4, but it was at least advanced a little bit along as a 4-4. I think it's a. I don't know. My guess is that's going to be ruled as a null game, and so it won't that won't be ruled as a tie. But I'm not 100% sure. I guess I can look up the rules on the side while we're waiting for the players to get reconnected in. But yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate. I thought the play of Reflect and Terra Bug the Heatran was decently safe there. I don't think the Heatran would have fallen to one attack from the Facade. If it did not faint from the Facade, then the Heat Wave probably picked up the Lunala and would deal a lot of damage back to the Ursaluna. And then I think from there you can just make damage trades until you get out of Trick Room. And then Miraidon might be able to win in the end game. Still not completely obvious, but yeah. Both players right now are restarting their switches. This is pretty standard after a disconnect happens. Just to, I don't know if it's superstitious or if it actually does anything, but the theory is that you can clear up any lag the game has, or so to speak, and just start fresh. So we'll wait for both players to get back in, and like I say, I'll pull up the rulings if I can find it.
So. Yeah, I'm really interested. There's obviously going to be at least one more game, so I'm really interested in how Adam and Chris are planning to pilot this I guess pseudo game 2 after having seen the leads they had earlier. In both games, Chris brought Lunala and Indeedee immediately, which means that Miraidon, who has also come out in both games, has had its electric terrain just immediately shut off both games. And so I'm really curious if Adam is going to try to make an adjustment, maybe leading with Grimmsnarl, or if Chris will make an adjustment anticipating Adam's adjustment. It's really hard to say. I do like the fact that Adam brought Grimmsnarl in that game too. It was already putting on pressure, and big knowledge that the +1 Meteor Beam with Helping Hand is not enough to take out Grimmsnarl. That says a lot about how bulky Adam has trained his Grimmsnarl to be. I really do think that Adam's best way here is likely to be able to outlast a Trick Room. And so here we are. We see Chris setting up a link code in order to get back into the series, get back into the matches with Adam. They are setting that up now, and will be getting back into a match here shortly.
Yep, I've got the rules on the side. As far as I can tell, that should have been ruled as a null game. So it basically, as if it never happened, these players will be proceeding now as if it were game 2 again. So I don't know. I'd say the board position was neutral. It wasn't like clearly favoring one player or another. Just always unfortunate to have the game interrupted. Hopefully that will not happen again. We'll just have to see both players get into it. Importantly, if you do experience a disconnect like this, the rules do not obligate you to lead or play the same way. You could bring 4 completely different Pokemon in a completely different order, or bring the same Pokemon and use different moves. Sometimes players will gentleman's agreement to do the same plays in the same order. It just kind of depends. So we'll have to see what both players decide to do.
Yeah, I think getting the exact same plays, even if they were to go for a gentleman's agreement, would be pretty difficult to replicate with the Heat Wave getting the burn on Lunala there.
Yeah.
So I don't anticipate that to happen in this specific case. Maybe if it was literally the first turn of the battle, immediate disconnect, where you only saw your opponent's lead. I've seen that gentleman's agreement before, but here we go. Chris selecting his team, preparations complete. And here we go back into the Pokemon Select screen.
Yep, I think if you're Chris, I do still like the idea of Lunala Indeedee. I think realistically, like, the hardest way you get punished for that is like a Grimmsnarl lead and then switch back to Miraidon and set up Light Screen. That's probably like the scariest thing that can happen. And if you do that, then there's no damage as Trick Room goes up. So I think I really like that Lunala Indeedee lead from Chris. That's pretty standard for Psy Spam anyway. I see very little reason to deviate from that. So we'll have to see if Adam decides to make another adjustment, or if he thinks that the Miraidon Heatran is just fine for that initial lead. One thing that could be interesting is potentially you could lead with the Iron Treads and go for Steel Roller turn 1. That would immediately remove the Psychic terrain and might one-shot the Indeedee. I don't actually know. But if it does one-shot the Indeedee, then you would be able to, you would immediately remove terrain, which could be impactful for the turns, but it would also give a free switch too. So looks like both players deciding to lead the same as they did in the previous game too.
Yeah, absolutely. That null game. And once again, we are seeing the electric terrain overwritten by the slower Indeedee Psychic terrain. So we are seeing, all right, how do we want to handle this? Are we wanting to set up Trick Room? Are we wanting to try to abuse Follow Me to get big damage off on the enemy's side of the field? It's really interesting. These trainers, null games always give you knowledge on what your opponent more insight into your opponent's thought process, but you aren't, like you said, obligated to repeat the same steps you did before.
Yeah, it looks like considering a Follow Me with the Indeedee, that would be a switch up. The Heatran opts to protect this turn, maybe expecting Helping Hand, Meteor Beam to be aimed that way. Indeedee will Follow Me away any attacks, but I would anticipate this is just a Volt Switch. We saw how poorly Dazzling Gleam went in Game 1. Yep, there's just that Volt Switch. And if you're Adam, I think you're still pretty happy about that. The Volt Switch damage into Indeedee also does matter. I can't quite tell if it's in Heat Wave range or not, but yeah, the Grimmsnarl is definitely going to be able to come in and survive that. Even a critical hit Meteor Beam would not be enough to pick up the KO onto the Grimmsnarl here, and may still be targeted at the Heatran. So if Grimmsnarl comes in scot-free, then I think Adam's really happy, but even just a regular hit from Meteor Beam, Grimmsnarl should be able to take that okay.
Yeah, and like you said, well, took a little bit more than I was expecting, but still over a quarter of its health, and with the priority on screens, definitely will be able to get something up before it has a chance of falling. Here we have Trick Room being hovered by the Lunala, looking forward to potentially get the speed advantage going forward, and Indeedee's going to be swapping out into the Ursaluna.
So the same play, I was going to say, yeah, the same play as Pseudo Game 2 here from Chris, wanting to take advantage of this defensive play from Adam, going for that Light Screen and Heat Wave. Lunala will be able to get Trick Room off this.
Yeah, no burn on the Heat Wave this time, but the Shadow Shield is broken. The Lunala now more vulnerable to taking damage from attacks, but Trick Room just got set up, and Ursaluna is on the field.
Yeah, Ursaluna still still having insane offensive pressure. A Facade into the Grimmsnarl is fairly safe. It's very likely that you'll be able to get away with that. I highly doubt the Grimmsnarl is going to Terrestrialize to a Terra Ghost here. And Ursaluna is pressuring the Heatran in and out of Terrestrialization as long as you can get the turn right. So if Heatran gets turns right here, I think it's in a real solid spot. The Grimmsnarl can get up its second screen, or could potentially opt for a Spirit Break into Lunala, lowering special attack. It starts off with a Protect, though.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just the double screens being set up, really hampering Chris's offensive pressure. And Facade tried to read the Terra Bug and did not land into this Heatran. And Moongeist Beam also trying to hit this Heatran through the screens and double whiffing into that Protect.
Yeah, if you're Adam, you love that turn. Absolutely no damage dealt. The Heatran has burned its Protect, but now you can go for Spirit Break into Lunala, and you're very likely to get that off. If Chris wants to deny that, then you have to throw an attack at the Grimmsnarl's way. And we saw how aggressively Chris targeted the Heatran last turn. If you just, I think you can definitely take a Heat Wave and get away with it. The big question is, like, these turns of Trick Room have not gone nearly as well for Chris as they did in that game 1. So by taking these trades the way that they are, actually a Thunder Wave into the Heatran, which might cause it to underspeed. Oh, let's see.
Let's see how. But the risk of that play is 25% of the time. You just won't get to move, and this Facade goes into the Grimmsnarl. The Reflect not enough, and it goes down.
Oh, that was a cheeky move, attempting to underspeed there. It's gonna take a Moongeist Beam for trouble. It will survive this attack, and actually pretty well too. The Citrus Berry means it should survive another Moongeist Beam as well. So you don't like that if you're Adam. You really would have liked to get a Heat Wave off there, but maybe not the end of the world still. Your last Pokemon is probably something that can protect. As long as you can weather this Trick Room with at least 2 Pokemon hanging out, I think you're gonna be okay. Actually forced to go into the Ditto though.
Yeah, really interesting going into the Ditto, and like you said earlier, the Ditto has Focus Sash, no way to get burned in any capacity, so Guts won't matter, so that really hampers the damage output. And so we'll see. The turn order is going to be very interesting here, with both Ursalunas speed tying each other. Yeah,
but I don't know, is the Ursaluna on Chris's side and KO range from the Headlong Rush on the other? If it's not, then Headlong Rush is not going to KO either of these Pokemon. And let's see, is it enough? It was enough with a critical hit, that's for sure.
That's massive right there.
Yeah, and actually, interestingly enough, it went before the Heatran too, didn't it? So do the Heatran and the Ursaluna speed tie? Right now with the Para?
It either is still faster than the Ursaluna, or gosh, I'm not sure. It's a speed tie, or the Paralyzed Heatran is still faster than Ursaluna, or no, because on the previous turn, it's a speed tie.
Yeah, it's a speed.
That's wild.
That's really awkward. I wonder how both players are reacting to that in person, but yeah, now you're in a. This is still okay, but like once Trick Room ends, like you're actually gonna have the Solar Pokemon, except for the Miraidon. So Miraidon's really got to carry. I think if you can put the Lunala into Dazzling Gleam KO range, then I think you're set. Dazzling Gleam should do enough at that point, but I don't know. I guess Crystal has Terra available too, and it is, well, it only is Terra Dark on the Urshifu, so maybe it would still fall to a Dazzling Gleam. Yeah, I think if you're Adam, you want to get some more damage onto this Lunala and then try to sweep with Miraidon in the end game. I think that's your angle, because I think there's only one turn of Trick Room left, isn't that right?
Yeah, I believe so. Trick Room was set up one turn after the Psychic Terrain, but notably, without the terrain on the field, that does mean that Sucker Punch is something that Adam has to watch out for. Ditto showing the fact that it does not have the Choice Scarf, going for Protect, as Heat Wave is clicked by the Heatran. But U-Turn goes right through that Protect. It does not mind it at all, and it is going to switch Urshifu out into the Indeedee, setting up that Psychic Terrain.
Yeah, I don't think you like that at all if you're Chris. I think that should have been a wicked blow. The U-Turn means that now the Miraidon will have terrain advantage, and you do not have the flexibility to switch out here. I'm pretty sure this is just going to be Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam, and I don't see a way around that if you're Chris. I think that's just going to KO everything. The Lunala, I think it would just have to survive. I think you just have to hope Lunala survives, but you don't have any defensive Terrasilizations left to get around this. I think it's just going to be Terra Fairy, Dazzling Gleam through the rest of Chris's Pokemon.
Yeah, we'll see. All of Chris's Pokemon are fairly low on HP, and it'll be really interesting to see what this Miraidon can do. It stalled out the Trick Room, got the electric terrain advantage, and is ready to wreak havoc with its choice specs. Chris has really got to think, how is he going to swing this back?
Yeah, and I don't know if you can. The Dazzling Gleam should just do enough to everything. Even if you somehow survived with one of these Pokemon, I don't even know if a combination attack of like Lunala plus Urshifu would be enough in Trick Room against the Miraidon. Don't forget the screens are still up too. The light screen would reduce the damage from Moongeist Beam, and although Wicked Blow would go through the Reflect, it would be a fairy type Miraidon. So I think Miraidon's got this one in the bag, unless something really weird happens. Maybe it's timid Miraidon without much special attack. Maybe it wouldn't pick up the knockout there. But yeah, if the Miraidon has any sort of offense at all, the spread Dazzling Gleam should do enough, and we do see it come out.
Yeah, here it comes, and I'm expecting to see a double KO, and absolutely that is what happens. And I think that's just going to wrap this up. All she wrote, Urshifu's going to switch out next turn, or be swapped in, and it's 4 times weak to this Dazzling Gleam, single target, stab with the Terrassilization. You can Sucker Punch Terra Dark to get a little bit of chip, try to get some knowledge for the next game. How bulky is this Miraidon? But that's about all that Chris is going to be able to get at the end of this game too.
Yeah, we will see the Sucker Punch damage to Reflect. Could potentially like indicate information, but if you're Adam, you might want to know that just about as much, because this damage count could come up later in endgame, and yeah, it does not do very much damage. I believe the Dazzling Gleam will do it.
Yeah, just about a quarter of Miraidon's HP there. Dazzling Gleam comes out, easy KO. The Urshifu had no chance. Critical hit just to style on him.
Yeah, how's that feel, Urshifu?
Yeah. I mean, it's never a bad day when Urshifu gets a taste of its own medicine.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, that takes us into Game 3. And I'm really excited. I think Adam adapted beautifully there. Really, Grimmsnarl did so much work with getting up the Reflect and the light screen there. And that side Thunder Wave was a really clever maneuver.
Yeah, it would have... Heat Wave damage onto both would have been nice, but in the end, I think the big key part about how Grimmsnarl was useful there is that it just slowed the game down. The Trick Room turns that Chris was able to blitz through Adam in Game 1 just didn't happen there in either Pseudo Game 2 or in the actual Game 2. So I'd love to see this Grimmsnarl again. Potentially you could bring it up front. Maybe it's a little bit too obvious to bring it up front. Chris has, in both games, called the Grimmsnarl coming in and used Meteor Beam on that slot. But, again, the big deal, I think, is that the Lunala hasn't been getting KOs for this. Like, it hasn't actually been trading KOs in exchange for these predictions. Like, if you're going to make big reads, then you want to get a KO out of it if you can with these Trick Room teams that require so much offensive momentum. Potentially considering Torkoal in the back. Torkoal would be good if the Heatran can go down, but again, if the Heatran doesn't go down, then it's not a great spot. I guess Urshifu didn't really help that much either in that game earlier, though.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Thinking about bringing the Torkoal, hasn't locked it in yet. And this is something I was really interested to see. He's currently considering the Gallade. Sacred Sword with the Sharpness ability will do big damage to a non-Terra Bug Heatran. And Psycho Cut will allow the Psychic Terrain to be used on a single target attack. Yeah,
not only that, but the Wide Guard on Gallade means that Dazzling Gleam endgame from Game 2 doesn't happen. So I really like this adjustment from Chris going with that Gallade, given that the... fourth Trick Room Sweeper wasn't especially impactful one way or another. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. And speaking of adjustments, Iron Treads is coming out saying, well, you'll win the Terrain War, but you're not getting Psychic Terrain. I have the option to just Steel Roller and get rid of your Psychic Terrain just like you got rid of my Electric Terrain.
Yeah, saying, how does it feel to lose your terrain, huh? I can do that too. I think the big question is, does Steel Roller actually one-shot Indeedee? If it doesn't one-shot Indeedee, then it's gonna be kind of awkward to do Steel Roller Volt Switch into Grimmsnarl, because Lunala is likely to click Trick Room on that, and then Ursaluna can come in, and then, oh no, your Iron Treads all of a sudden can't do any damage because it just locked into Steel Roller, which will fail if terrain is not active. So you have to play this very carefully. If you're Chris, I think Follow Me Trick Room is your safest bet. That will guarantee that you get Trick Room off unless there is a Rock Slide from the Iron Treads. And Rock Slide might not even be that bad anyway. Rock Slide, Volt Switch into Grimmsnarl and then set up a screen. Like, you might be wasting enough Trick Room turns for that to be favorable no matter what.
Yeah, we see the Follow Me from the Indeedee, just like you were saying, and the Volt Switch is forced into that slot. And that means probably any move the Iron Treads is going for with that Choice Band is going to knock out the Indeedee, with it taking that much damage from the Volt Switch. Adam really considering, probably suspecting the Trick Room is coming and deciding what he wants to switch into. Did he bring that Grimmsnarl in this Game 3? And maybe not. Urshifu's coming back out.
And we do see Rock Slide. That's gonna not KO the Indeedee and not flinch the Lunala either. Lunala gets that Trick Room up, and now, woo, I bet you love to see Helping Hand Expanding Force if you're Chris, but Miraidon could potentially come in on that, and also Grimmsnarl could potentially come out on that. Maybe this is a bait. Like, protecting the Urshifu, go into Grimmsnarl, that would burn a turn of Trick Room there too. It would mean if there's no Heatran though, deciding that you haven't been bringing Torkoal, I don't need to bring Heatran to check that. Instead, I'm just gonna bring my Urshifu, which also threatens you in a different way. We'll have to see how this turn goes. I think if Chris gets a KO here somewhere, then it's Chris's favor, but the Iron Treads, I think, should have a fairly safe switch to Grimmsnarl if Grimmsnarl is here, but maybe Grimmsnarl would have come in last turn. Not sure. We'll have to see how this shapes out.
It's really interesting. Chris thinking about wanting to preserve the Indeedee in order to maintain the terrain wars, and switches in his own fighting type in that Gallade. Iron Tread switches out, likely, like you said, into the... Oh, no! A repeat of Game 1, Grimmsnarl not coming this game, and Ditto saying, hey, I can take advantage of this terrain and Trick Room just as well as you can.
Terrestrialization happening here on the Urshifu? Wow, okay. It probably...
He thinks he can survive the Expanding Force, more than likely.
Yeah, it must be.
Dropping the weakness.
Yeah, the Urshifu now will be able to hopefully survive this attack and then go for the Surging Strikes, but yeah, that doesn't happen. Urshifu goes down. Goodbye, Urshifu!
Yeah, no. And that's dangerous. That's the Terrestrialization gone. It means that the Ditto can't Terrestrialize into a normal type to dodge the Moongeist Beam. Really limits the options on Adam's side of the field. He can't be happy about that. And now, all 4 of Adam's Pokemon have been revealed, and we know that Grimmsnarl isn't in the back to slow things down through this Trick Room again. Yeah,
no Grimmsnarl means, I think, oh my gosh, like the Miraidon coming in, it probably can tank a combination attack. Maybe you can say, oh, I'll win the speed tie with my Lunala, go for a Moongeist Beam into your Lunala, but, I mean, Krista can Terrestrialize the Lunala, right? I mean, he's allowed to do that. The Lunala here could Terrestrialize, and then a combination attack into Miraidon would probably KO it. You could also just go for a Moongeist into the opposing Ditto, and then if there's a KO somewhere, like if Miraidon takes a KO somewhere, then Ursaluna just comes in and big headlong rush into the Miraidon. Miraidon's not going to like that. So I'd still say this is Chris favored. That was not a good damage trade for Adam, given that he dealt no damage. So Chris definitely making better use of his Trick Room turns here in Game 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see a Sacred Sword being locked in here. Miraidon switching back out, wanting to be able to conserve the ability to get the electric terrain up. Iron Tread's coming out, going to get the Quark Drive boost. For the first time this series, we'll see it is the speed boost. So it'll definitely be moving fast, but in Trick Room, that means it'll be moving last.
Terrestrialization from Lunala to that Terra Fairy will ensure that it will not fall in one hit to the Moongeist Beam. Expanding Force, I guess, could be kind of scary here, but actually no, because the Miraidon,
goodness.
yeah, just I forgot it had electric train up. You're not going to click expanding force, but yeah. Iron Treads goes down!
I don't know. Oh, wow. Yeah, Iron Treads goes down. I don't know if that was a prediction or just choosing a strong attack in the Miraidon slot, but we find out for the first time this series that Gallade is slower than the Lunala, allowing it to underspeed the Ditto. Ditto once again winning the speed tie against the Pokemon it's transformed into, but that doesn't matter here in the end. Ditto goes down. It's a double KO on Adam's side for only one taken out on Chris's side in return.
Yeah, and now, like, what do you do? The Ursaluna is going to come in, and the, like, Miraidon, spoiler, cannot survive a headlong rush. There's no way. Even if you had Reflect and, like,
this is pretty devastating because even assuming it could survive a headlong rush without terastallizing, it has to lock itself into Dazzling Gleam here, because if it locks into a Dragon move, it can't hit the Lunala. If it locked into an Electric move, it can't hit the Ursaluna. And like you said, headlong rush takes it out, and that makes it an easy Game 3 for Chris.
Yeah, I think not bringing Grimmsnarl there in Game 3 bit Adam in the behind. The damage from Expanding Force into the Urshifu was just way too much, expecting to survive that attack. Lunala says, nah, I got way too much special attack for that. And the Urshifu going down means that Chris from there just had relatively safe damage trades in order to clutch it out there in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I do kind of like the thought about leaving Heatran behind, predicting accurately that Chris wasn't going to bring Torkoal, so he didn't need the Flash Fire and didn't need to bring something that was quite so weak to the Ursaluna. But yeah, no Grimmsnarl there made that Game 3 much more difficult for Adam to have a chance in, I think.
Well, that was our round 2 there between Chris and Adam. Chris will advance, presumably to 2-0. And we will have 2 more rounds of Swiss in this league challenge here at the Collector Store at St. Peters, Missouri. We will return shortly with round 3.